Hi everyone, and welcome to my very first video about PHP Namespaces and Autoloaders. This is part 1 of a series introducing professional PHP development in 2024. My name is Frank, by the way. I'm 29 years old and I'm from the Netherlands. But that's all about me for today. Now, I want to start off a bit different. There are a bunch of videos out there that explain how to set up PHP on your machine, how to write if statements, etc. Instead, I'd like this video series to be valuable to everyone and dive deeper. Whether you're currently a PHP developer, you've written some PHP 10 years ago, or you're just starting out, I'd like you to get something from this series. I'm going to start this video with a completely empty project. I have PHP 8.3 installed locally for simplicity. To understand how autoloaders work and why we need them, we need to go back a bit in time. One of my very first programming projects was in PHP. Back then, things were very different and the language was very less mature. Let's say we have one file, index.php. Right now it's very empty, but let's just pretend there's lots of code here. And then at the end there's a string display. Let's keep this hello world for now. And basically this is our application. We can run this. And then we get a hello world. Let's also make sure that it has a nice new line, so our terminal looks better. And this is our start of our application. To organize code, we can use classes and namespaces. So let's say in our lots of code, there's actually not that much going on. It's basically retrieving a user and storing it in a database. Let's model that for now. Let's create a class user and let's create a class database. And let's organize even further. Let's put them in namespaces. So my user goes in the namespace model and my database goes in the namespace storage. And then to see what actually ends up happening with those namespaces, let's put a get class call here for a new database. And then if we execute our script again, we can see that the fully qualified name of this class is now storage \database. Now you can have as many classes in one file as you want, but things haven't become easier to organize. So the next step is to split up our classes. Now a simple option would be to create a file named class.php and move our classes to there. So let's do that for now. So we create a new file, classes, and basically paste our code in there. If we execute our code now again, our PHP file, it's going to say it didn't find database. Now, of course, the namespace now changed, so it should be storage as database, but it's still gonna not be found because we also need to do require once on our classes file to actually load it. And now it works again. But with many classes, it's not getting very organized yet. So let's move to one class per file. Let's rename this to database and then create a new class for user. And you see instead of creating the file using the create new file, I do a new PHP class. And let's make sure that the database actually only contains the database. And the user is now in the namespace model again. So if we're running our script, it's going to find the database because that's included. But if we now want to do a new user, it's not actually going to find it because we didn't include it. So we also need to include our user file, which one now works again. So for now we only have 2 classes, but let's imagine there's hundreds. It's gonna become quite messy. So instead of explicitly requiring every file, we can do something with the autoloader of PHP. Basically what happens is every time PHP doesn't know where to find a class, it's going to call this function and it's going to supply a string with a fully qualified name. And then it expects us to include the file classes in. Let's echo for now. Autoload called with fqn. Qn with end of line at the end. And let's execute our script. What happens? It's calling autoloader with this parameter, and now we need to tell our class where to load. So for now, let's do this. If un equals model user fire once user PHP. Now obviously we can do this much nicer, and instead of saying for each fully qualified name which specific file the class is in, we can just replace the backslashes with a / append.php and load the file from there. But we're going to go a different route here because we don't want to do all this autoloading ourselves. We can use Composer for that because it's available in most environments anyway, because we manage our packages, dependencies through that. So let's do a Composer init, and let's just keep all the defaults for now. So I'll pretend I'm making a package called intro on my name. We'll leave the description empty. Let's just skip the author here, skip the stability. Let's mark this as a project, MIT license. I don't want any dependencies. I don't want any development dependencies. And let's skip the autoloading for now, because we want to do this manually and look through this. So all the other defaults are there. If we now refresh, we do have a Composer file here, and we got a git ignore because it asked us if we wanted one. So let's delete our git ignore and add the autoload settings in here. So let's start with the files autoloading. Put our database file and our user file in here. And now if we add try once of the vendor autoload.php file here, as you notice, we don't have that file yet, so we actually need to run a Composer install here to generate it. And then if we execute our script again, we're gonna find the file. Now, every time we add a file or move it or rename it, we'll have to modify it here, and that's not really ideal. So instead of files, we'll use PSR4 here. And then let's choose our namespace for this project. So I'm going to go for princefunc intro, and I'm going to point it toward the source folder. Now, we don't have that folder yet, so we'll create it here. And we actually already have two namespaces. So we have the model namespace and we have the storage namespace. Let's create folders for those as well. Then our database goes into the storage and our user goes into the model. Now, because our namespaces previously didn't match up, PHP Storm is getting confused. So let's fix this manually. So this is the namespace here. For storage is going to be. And then in our index, it actually worked. So if we now clear our autoloading, which we can do using Composer dump autoload or DU for short, and then we call our index.php file again, it's fully wired up again. Now, this is as far as I'll go in this video. If you want to continue on this journey, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.